And good evening and welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. My guest this evening is Bob Rader, who's the Executive Director of CABE. Bob, welcome. How are you?
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks for coming down. How are you?
Great.
Nice to finally meet you after talking and communicating in the last couple weeks and months. So tell us a little bit about Bob Rader and exactly what CABE is and what you guys do.
Sure. Well, I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education. Our job is to represent boards of education and to help them with various things. Okay. We represent about 150 of the 166 or 169, depending how you're counting, school districts across the state. Okay. And we help them with advocacy, which means going to the legislature or Congress. We help them sometimes when they're in court. We help them with professional development. We teach them about their roles and responsibilities. We work with the superintendents. We hold the biggest educational convention in the state together with the superintendents and provide educational leadership in that way. And we do a number of other things that really are aimed at helping individual board members and board members in general so that they're as effective as possible in carrying out their roles.
Now, what are some of the things that you guys do?
Oh, well, in advocacy, certainly we have this very week. On March 20th, we go up to the legislature and we're going to talk to our legislative leaders about, and Governor Lamont is coming, and we're going to talk about the things that we need. In specifics, we need more help for educational cost sharing, which provides money to school districts. We need more help with the money that must go for kids who have disabilities under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So those are just a couple of the things. Okay. Certainly there's a lot this legislative session about things like regionalization, bringing districts together. And our feeling is that if districts want to get together, that's fine. We've seen a couple of instances in which the school boards wanted to get together between two different districts, but when it was put out to the general public, they voted against it because in many situations, the schools are the center of our communities. So they didn't want to have any chance of their school closing and having to go somewhere else. So that's one thing we do. We do professional development. I mentioned the convention we have.
Yep, sure.
We also go out to individual school districts and help them. We'll sit down with them, do workshops for them, talk about things like the Freedom of Information law, their roles and responsibilities, not only under that law, but under other laws. We try to help them so that their superintendent and the board work together as what we consider the leadership team of the school district. We have publications. We send out the CABE Journal 11 times a year, and it contains lots of best practice information, legal information, and other information. Okay. We also provide labor relations information to our districts, and one of the most important things we do is policy. Policy is how a district, how a board governs and sets the tone for the district. Okay. And policy is sort of like the legislature passes laws, right? Districts adopt policies. Correct. And they can be in nearly any area, in student discipline, in how they're going to work with their administrators, how they're going to work with their teachers, how boards themselves govern themselves. So there's a lot that goes into each policy manual, and it's different for every school district.
And I'm sure you've read most of those policy manuals over the last
haven't really read them, but I was actually the head of policy services for the New York State School Boards Association, and then I came over here and I saw how they did it here, and I was very impressed, and I decided I'd like to keep my finger in a little, but they do such a great job, I'm not getting in the way.
Exactly. And you've been executive director for how long?
I'm on my 24th year. Wow. Which amazes me, having come to Connecticut without knowing very many people, having a very different experience in New York. But it's been great. It's a wonderful state, and working for volunteer school board members. The ones I work mostly with, obviously, are our board of directors.
Yes.
And not only are they giving their time and their efforts in their own school districts,
Right.
they're doing it statewide, sort of an extra level.
Yes.
And they're so impressive, and a couple have gone up to the National School Boards Association as directors. We even had one from East Lyme.
Okay.
Mary Broderick, who we still are lucky enough to work with, she became the president of the National School Boards Association.
Wow.
So it's been a thrill in those cases where that type of thing happens.
And actually, you and I have a mutual friend, and that mutual friend is Lon Seidman, who's the chairman of the Board of Education.
Yeah, Lon's a brilliant guy. He's
a great guy.
very helpful, knows technology, as you know, and we have called upon him to do that. But he certainly helps in this area of the state. He's one of our area directors.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah.
I've known Lon for about 20 years.
Oh, he's a terrific guy.
Yeah.
Just terrific guy.
And obviously he's doing a good job with the Board of Education up in his district.
Absolutely, absolutely. He's done a lot of different things with that board, and he's one of the real experienced board members who also has a political past.
Oh, yeah.
So he's real good to talk to about how do we get things done.
Exactly. Now, speaking of how we get things done, what's going on up at the Capitol with the legislation and the legislature that affects your organization?
Oh, absolutely. Well, there's a question of resources. Everybody knows that there's a budget deficit for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
We have never sort of recovered completely from the 2008 recession, and it's really hurt Connecticut, and it's hurt our school districts. There is cutting back. Mm-hmm. There is an attempt by the governor, as Governor Malloy tried 2 years ago, to have districts pick up part of the cost of teachers' retirement system.
Okay.
And our feeling is, well, we're not getting enough money, first of all, to keep things going as is.
Right.
The taxpayers can't pay more in their individual communities. They're taxed out. So don't ask us to pick up this burden, which we've never been in charge of, and have no managerial or other rights to how the money is handled or who gets the money. So we ask that be continued to be paid for by the state. One of the problems is some of our districts, have 4 years of the same money coming from the state through ECS, and that really hurts. Everything has gone up. The cost of teachers has, of course, gone up as salaries have increased because of contracts. Books, paper, transportation, everything has gone up in price, and it's hard for districts to keep doing what they're doing, much less move ahead in the way that they really like to.
Now, you mentioned ECS. What exactly is ECS?
Well, ECS is our general aid formula.
Okay. Every
district at this point gets a little of it. There have been plans, even the last year, to stop giving it to some of our considered wealthier districts. Okay. Though our feeling is that every district should get some money from the state to show the state's commitment to the students in that district.
Wow, you guys are busy.
Oh yeah, we've got a lot going on all the time.
You do. Now let's talk a little bit about the combined districting,
the regionalization,
and how that could work. And
well, we think that boards can get together very easily, and if the idea is to save money by sharing different services, well, districts are already doing that. Districts in this area of the state and further east in particular have worked on a school calendar, have worked on transportation. There is much going on where districts share different services, the back office work, and there's talk about, well, there shouldn't be a superintendent in every district, especially with the smaller ones. But many of the smaller ones have part-time superintendents. So the idea that we're going to save a lot of money it's a fallacious idea. There just isn't enough money that could be saved. And we've seen attempts to do this in Vermont, in Maine, in other places, and the districts are not happy about it, and sometimes they end up actually going back to how it had been before. Districts want to get together, they can. Perfect example, you mentioned Lon Seidman.
Yes.
Region 4
Right.
is a number of different districts coming together
Yes.
and working together. It just seems to us that if they want to, that's fine. Let's get rid of some of the harsh prescriptive ways in which these things happen, but make it possible for districts to want to do this. Some incentivizing would be very helpful, rather than saying, you know, if you continue to do things as you are, then you're not going to get any money from the state.
Now, what types of incentives do you think would help them?
Well, certainly providing financial incentives
Right.
to do these type of things, to maybe give it a pilot, to do things for a little while, see if it really works. That could be something that could be helpful to some districts who are interested in doing this. I mentioned 2 districts that tried it. The funny thing about the 2 districts I'll mention, and I don't want to mention the names.
Okay.
They're not in this part of the state.
Gotcha.
But you know, I had gone out and did a workshop maybe 7 or 8 years ago in one of them, and they said they'd never, ever want to regionalize with one of the other districts because the school is the center of that community. And what happened was that, I guess, because of declining enrollments, which we do see also across the state,
Right.
we saw the 2 districts try to come together. And they worked on it very hard, and the 2 boards said yes, and then it has to go to a public referendum. And the people of the 2 communities both said no. We'll pay a little more because this is a school, this is the center of our communities. So the idea that we'll pull everybody together, it'll save lots of money and make it very worthwhile for the districts is not really true in all cases.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Bob, would you mind sticking around for another segment?
Oh, I'd love to.
We'll be right back.
Okay, so we drowned the fire,
Yep.
stirred it, drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. I already posted it.
I'll drop it off on my next grocery run.
A lot of people donate. I don't have to.
I'm too busy to donate.
I only have a few things.
I just really need some me time.
It's too cold outside.
I'll get around to it eventually.
I just don't have the time. I just can't get motivated.
But it's raining.
I can do it next week.
I'll donate at the end of the year.
We all have excuses, but your donations change lives.
And welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show, sitting here with Bob Rader from CABE. Bob, welcome back.
Pleasure.
Pleasure,
Good to be
definitely.
here.
Thanks for sticking around. All right, so we're going to talk about opening up this segment, talking about membership and all the towns that you guys cover.
Well, we cover most of the districts. We have about 150 of the 169 school districts that are recognized in Connecticut.
Okay.
Some of the others have dropped out over the years, mostly for financial reasons. And we're always very disappointed in this because we know, first of all, that it's a voluntary organization, but it's only as strong as all the members who are part of it. I think a couple of years ago, what happened when we lost some membership is that the governor had put forward some ideas on how school districts were going to be resourced, and he talked about much of the cost of, in particular, teachers' retirement being paid for by the districts. I think because that year it took so long to come to a budget, some of the districts got very nervous. They went to their towns. Some of them dropped out of CABE. But we're concerned about that. And this year in particular, in this area, Clinton is not a member.
Okay.
Now, we've been in touch with Clinton. And I certainly liked working with Clinton. I'd been there years ago. And very frankly, with some of the bills in the legislature that we're fighting about consolidation, would require a district like Clinton to get involved with the regionalization effort. And certainly they would be, it would certainly seem to me that they would be one of the districts that should be strongest in being a part of CABE to protect their interests as this regionalization idea goes forward, or not.
Exactly. So what else do we want to talk about as far as CABE goes?
Well, there's lots going on. We have 3 different areas that we've really pushed this year besides the things that we do every year.
All right.
The first is diversity and equity. We now have about 45% of the children of the state of color. In other words, they're African American or Hispanic or Latino, however it's looked at. And what we have found is that on school boards, there's a much smaller amount. And I've looked at this, and I've sort of even talked to the National School Boards Association. When I look at the statistics, it looks to me like even though we're about to become, in some ways, what's considered a majority-minority country, where there are more people of color than white people, there aren't that many people of color on boards of education. And it's funny because the national statistics and the Connecticut statistics, from what we could tell, are pretty much in line. By that I mean there are about 12% African Americans on boards of education and about 5 or 6% of Latino or Hispanic. And we're worried about that. We've always believed that the boards of education should represent their districts. There's been some research showing that represent their districts in all terms of, backgrounds, experience, etc. The other thing is we found that there's at least one study, and I'm sure in the next few years there will be more, showing that when you have people of color on your board of education, the children of color are much more likely to be helped by these people of color on the board. In other words, they're more sensitive to the needs of those students. And certainly as we move forward, we want to help that. So we're not saying get off your boards, but what we are saying is be sensitive to this, learn about cultural competency and all the different people who are coming into Connecticut and into our schools. Think about if there's a vacancy or somebody wants to run for the board, about getting a person of color on the board who can represent people who are not often that well represented. So that's one area, diversity and equity. And you want to ask a question?
Sure. No, go ahead.
So that's what we've been working on. We're about to put out a toolkit. We've started to work with districts, helping them with these ideas. It's a very new world. It's been a journey for me with all kinds of new things, white privilege we talk about, and other things that I never thought of, and now am learning that it's very important to many, many people. Another thing is civility. And I guess you could say you just have to look at the national media to know what we're talking about. But we want to make sure not only do boards act in civil ways towards each other, towards their community, we want to make sure that students are taught how to be civil, how to express themselves in a way that helps the conversation, not puts down the conversation. I got a call today from a superintendent who I will be working with, who said her board puts down the teachers, puts down the administrators, and in public, and the teachers union is complaining about it. Well, yeah, come on, guys.
That's not a good thing.
No, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. These are professionals.
Yep.
I'm married to a teacher. Gives so many hours of work every night to help kids, to think of new ways of doing things to engage the kids. So we want everybody to be civil. We don't have to agree on everything, but let's do it in tones and in understanding and in empathy and sensitivity so that we can all talk about these. Everybody has a right to an opinion, and that's what we want to get across. And the third area, which is a little different for us, is student voice, which certainly started last year, I think, after the Parkland shootings, and the kids in that school, which I happen to know, really became very strong, especially on the gun matters. My brother lives in Parkland, and his partner in his law firm is the commissioner or mayor. I don't remember exactly what he's called, but I certainly know the caliber of kids down there and what they're trying to do. And between that and obviously what you had in Newtown, we want to make sure that kind of thing does not happen again. Newtown, the kids were too young to really get involved with this, but we are always glad to see the parents out talking about these issues, sad as they are. So those are the three areas we're trying to put a little extra emphasis on this year.
Wow. And the year's almost over for the school year.
Well, it is, but I got a feeling we'll be doing these issues for a lot longer.
Exactly.
They are the kind of issues you want to work on, in that I feel, like I said, with the diversity work, I feel I'm on a mission. I went to school in the high school in the 60s and 70s, and we had racial riots, we had all kinds of problems. It's a little different today, but it's very important that we begin to make sure we have teachers of color and principals of color. And it's not only for the kids of color, it's the white kids and other kids also should be exposed to we still call them minority teachers, but they're really teachers of color. I was at a meeting today about that very issue. We only have about 8.7% of all our teachers are teachers of color. And again, we have kids, 45% of Connecticut kids are of color. We have to give them role models. We have to give them people they can talk to. And it's hard. It's hard keeping teachers of color in our schools. They are expected to do some things that maybe other teachers are not. They're very often, especially if they become an administrator, are seen as the disciplinarians or the people who will deal with that part of the population. And in many ways, it's not fair to them and it's not fair to the students. So we're going to continue to work on those issues.
And how would you work on those issues?
Well, certainly it's the sensitivity, the training. People have to understand that our world is changing. We have to keep up with it. We have to be able to help kids who are English language learners, or kids with disabilities, or members of the LGBTQ group. So there's always more to do to help these kids, help the teachers, help principals and other administrators, superintendents as well, and of course members of boards of education.
You guys sound like you're a really busy organization for everything that you do, and you don't even hit all 169 towns in the state.
Well, we are busy. Obviously, when some of the work we do, like going to the legislature, we don't say, oh, only our members get money. We push for all schools.
Exactly.
And we like to have all schools and all districts behind us as we do it.
Exactly. And you guys obviously represent a good portion here on the shoreline?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Madison, Bob Hale used to be our president. You may remember Bob. Wonderful president. Bob Mitchell, in as much as it seems like Bob time, Bob Mitchell from Montville is our current president. And we are certainly very busy with some of the districts down here. And we hold our Summer Leadership Institute right here. We did last year in Westbrook.
I was going to say Bob Hale was the principal at the Morgan High School in Clinton.
There are two Bob Hales. Bob Hale Sr., who is on our board of directors and went on to the town council in Madison. And there was Bob Hale, who was a principal,
Yes,
who you're thinking of.
yes.
Great people.
Actually, because Bob Hale, who was the principal, actually, before he retired, his last graduating class was he handed me my diploma.
Oh, wow.
So it's like,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
That's great. That's great.
If people want more information on CABE before we say goodnight, where can they go?
Well, they can always go to our website, www.cabe.org.
Okay.
We put out a lot of information. We encourage people to get involved in looking at, well, would they want to be on our Board of Education? We're always looking for good people who decide to run and get on. We're going to be putting up an extra web page very shortly with more information on becoming a board member. Certainly they can call us.
Yeah.
I can't always help as far as what a parent may say about Mrs. Smith, the third grade teacher,
Right.
but I can certainly help them if their questions are something apropos to what we do.
Bob Rader from CABE, I want to thank you for coming down. We'll see you again soon.
Absolutely. I hope so.
All right,
I
on
hope so.
behalf of
Thank
Bob
you very
Rader, I'm
much,
Pete
Pete.
Mezzetti. Thanks, good night, and we'll see you next time.